Morning, mate.
Morning, mate. How are you?
I'm okay, and welcome all to My Life, My Music with the Governor, Alan Hudson, as we take a trip down memory lane through chapter and verse. And in this episode, we remember 1971-72 season. So we'll call this Blue is the Colour, Uddy.
Yeah, it's a good time, mate. It's a good time. Strangely enough, it was a period. It was a period that changed my life, as we all know. We've spoken about it before on our shows, and with the photographs I just sent you. It was I just had a phone call from Don Shanks and told him I was doing the show with you, and he sent his regards, and I said, he said, oh, it's great. He said all the Stoke supporters can listen to it, and and this, that, and the other. I said, yeah, but this is a different period. It's a different period of life. This is not the Britannia Stadium. This is the stadium that I fell in love with, which was a Victoria ground, which I still believe to this day could have been saved and renovated, and they could have still been enjoying their football there instead of the Britannia Stadium, because the youngsters of today wouldn't know of that, and plus the fact I was in the Churchill Arms the other day in London, and I was talking about I told these people I was with Don Shanks and a chap called Colin Howe, a lovely man who's involved with QBR, and a couple of other people there, and I was telling them what Tony Waddington done at the Victoria Stadium for Stanley Matthews, and when he put his testimonial on, and one of them got it up on his phone, and he said it's unbelievable. He said they had Lev Yashin in goal, they had Di Stefano, they had Puskas, Jimmy Greaves, Johnny Haynes, you name them, and they all turned out for this game. And so the memory of the Victoria ground for those people at my age and a little bit older, is just an incredible. It was a very, very. It kind of sums up the change in football, which just took us into the dark days. I think, because I'm sure Spurs fans feel the same. The old White Hart Lane, it will never be the same,
I don't think anything's ever the same. You move on. And I did notice that on commentary, watching a Stoke game, I think it was Friday night, they were live on the TV against the Baggies, of course, and they've took the Booth and End with them, so it won't be the same Booth and End, but they still do call it the Booth and End, so fair play to them. But back in the 1971-72 season, you were still at Chelsea, you'd come back, you were still carrying that injury that kept you out of Mexico, etc. You still wasn't really 100% yourself. You've started it. It's August 1971, and the first game of the season, you travel away to the double winners, Arsenal, and get a bit of a cold there, don't you, at Highbury, one of your favourite grounds?
Well, I wouldn't really call it a cold. It was more of a thrashing. That was a season that after they won the double, I think, and we won the cup or something, and they paraded these trophies and all that, and but it just goes to show. I think we spoke on the show before about how we look at today. They you talk about these managers of today, how incredible they are, and you think of the job that Bertie Mee and Don Howe done at Arsenal, because 18 months before that we went to Arsenal and we wiped the floor with them. That was my first season, and we beat them 3-0 at Highbury, and it could have been 6, 7, 8, and many of that team played that wiped the floor with us, and it was only the takeover of Bertie Mee and bringing in Don Howe that transformed them. Yeah. And they give us a hiding on that day, so it just goes to show that it's not, it's as we also always harp on, that it's all about management, and it just shows that the physiotherapist took over and become, for me, probably the greatest manager Arsenal have ever had. Forget Wenger, because he was a football man. He'd had an unbelievable background in France. But this chap just come out of the treatment room and took over the team, and what an effect he had.
Well, in the summer of 1971, we had a couple of songs that were knocking round the charts, top of the charts. Knocked Three Times by Dawn, Chirpy Chirpy Cheep Cheep, and as the season started, Get It On by T-Rex was #1. Now, Chirpy Chirpy Cheep Cheep, I put out on My Life, My Music and Alan Hudson and your socials. Hi, I'm Alan Hudson. This is Chirpy Chirpy Cheep Cheep featuring Peter Osgood. He done a great version of Chirpy Chirpy, didn't he? Did that come from the Cup Final album that you made, Al, when you introduced us there?
It came from the album The Blue Is the Colour.
Yeah.
And we never knew anything about Blue Is the Colour. We all met up in the morning in this pizza bar. It's funny, strange enough, because the pubs weren't open early in the morning, and to get to the recording studio, and we had a few beers in the pizza bar. Then we took a couple of crates of beers into the recording studio and worked it from there. And then obviously, there was some could sing, some couldn't, some wannabes, but Osgood was always fancied himself. Whenever there was anything going, he was always the best at everything, and he made a fantastic job of that. He had such fast, unbelievable confidence, and he knocked out a great tune there, Paul, didn't he?
He certainly did, and there was a couple of others. It was Middle of the Road that released it, but around the same time, I was researching last night, Al, Mac and Katie Kissoon also recorded it, and it was Lally Stott that actually done the original. So within the space of probably 12 months, there was about 3 or 4 different versions, including ours, that was knocking about of Chirpy Chirpy Cheep Cheep. But
ours was never brought out as a single like that.
No, I know, but I tell you what, he was as good as, to be truthful.
Well, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised you're saying that. I mean, when he started in the recording studio, we all kind of took a step back and had a look at each other and thought, what's all this about? We're in the presence of a real superstar here, and we always looked up to us for being the player he was, but it took a new meaning. And the worst thing you could ever do to us is pay him a compliment, because he was very good at doing that to himself. But you had to love the big fella for that, because if it weren't for him, we wouldn't have had the success we had, and it's a pity that the management and the club itself didn't realise that, because they sold him when they sold the pair of us. Ossie was supposed to come with me in '74, and he reneged and went to Southampton. But they got rid of probably, we lost Jimmy Greaves the other week, probably the greatest goal scorer of all in a blue shirt. The classiest, for a young kid of his age and coming through, do what he did, and went on to do what he done. And the saddest story, but Osgood after Greaves, I think it was Osgood.
Absolutely, and he finished top scorer that season with 31. We're going to get into our first track. We actually can't play the tracks because of copyright, but we do put a Spotify playlist to it, and we talk about the tracks. And it's Rainy Days and Mondays, and you alluded to how brilliant the management partnership of Bertie, me and Don Howe were. And Bertie was a physio, and then he went on to manage, of course. Don was the coach. Well, Dave was the coach to Tommy Docherty. Tommy had gone, and Dave took over. But as Arsenal kicked on, Dave didn't really kick on. And when you says that Ossie liked the compliments and we paid him the compliments, Dave Sexton never once complimented Ossie on anything that he ever done for Chelsea, did he?
No, it was an amazing story, really, because Dave wasn't actually the coach with Tommy Docherty. I don't think. Not at this particular time. He might have been at one time. I think he might have been with Tommy Docherty, and then he went to Arsenal. He was a coach at Arsenal, and when Tommy left, the story goes, the 3 or 4 of the Chelsea boys, before they picked a new manager, they went over to Highbury, and they sat down with Dave and pleaded him to come back to Chelsea because they all got on well with him as a coach.
Got ya.
And he took over the managerial job, and that's where, although we had fantastic success the first 2 seasons, it all went pear-shaped. He showed his I don't say his inability to not be able to manage. He wasn't a great man manager. He was very good coach. I'm not I'm not a lover of coaching and everything else, but I think if he had just basically stuck to coaching, Chelsea would have went on to, that we wouldn't have had the trouble we had. And life would have turned out so differently. But having said that, I'm glad it turned out the way it did, because that photograph I sent you this morning changed my life.
It did, and we'll get on to that later. It's the photograph with you, pretty much the closest person as you're turning away in sorrow. George Eastman, the Stoke boys, are turning away in joy, and you didn't realise it at the time, but it's a very iconic picture that as they're going off to pretty much George Graham retirement, the fella that's sulking because he's the closest to them when they scored that goal is a fella that's going to replace George Eastham in that number 10 shirt, and a young boy that was taken down to Arsenal to watch George Graham as part of his education. So football certainly has that romance, and the songs have the romance, and there's a few romantic songs that we're going to get into, but I do want to just touch up upon the rainy days and Mondays, because there's a great story about how Dave used to smell your breath, and if he could smell alcohol, you were over the racecourse, boys.
Well, it was we kind of sussed it after once or twice, and we'd come in on a Monday, and we really did enjoy ourselves. The stories on a Monday morning were they would have made fools and horses look stupid, stories, especially Tommy Baldwin and Charlie Cook down the road arm wrestling with Richard Harris and Peter O'Toole and people like that. It was an ongoing, it was like a movie really. But we used to get on a Monday while we're telling stories. Dave would be outside probably listening to these stories, hear what we'd done, and then he'd smell one or two breaths, and it was in the club van and over to Epsom, carted off over to Epsom down the race course, and the cross country, and it done me a lot. It was good in many ways, because there's nothing worse. If I was a coach and I was working with all these people that couldn't see the ball, it would be there's no point. So Dave would make a good decision there. So we just run and ragged. But I used to when I watch Epsom races now on telly, I cringe and think running that coming, because our finishing run was part down Tattenham Corner and that long running, and mate, when you got to the end of it, you know you'd had a morning's training, and them horses do it. It just shows you how fantastic they are. But they hadn't been out the night before. But no, that was kind of another kind of poke in the eye for what was going on in them days. It just couldn't go on like that. You could, moving on to Stoke, our manager at Stoke, he wouldn't come near players on a Monday morning. Just get on with it. He didn't care what you did really, as long as you did it on a Saturday. That was all he was interested in.
Mind you, it could have been worse, Al. You could have been playing for Liverpool, and Dave was manager of Liverpool, and you've had to go over Aintree because there's jumps on that race course.
Well, yeah, I would have swerved them. I'd have said the sunlight's in my eyes or something, like they do today. I'd dull them off, they say.
Our next track, Al, If by Bread. I didn't realise until you sent it me last night that it's the same song. So David Gates, he wrote the song, but in 1975, Telly Savalas covered it. I thought as a kid it was the original, but it wasn't. This was recorded in 1971 by Bread, and it's a great tune. It's a fantastic tune, and I guess the essence of If, while you were playing on that European tour of Chelsea in the Cup Winners' Cup, could you be the first team that wins a European trophy for Chelsea? So it still resonates today, doesn't it, that song to you?
Well, yeah, it's all life is all about ifs and buts, isn't it? If only being in the right place at the right time, and when you listen to the song, that's what it's all about. And I think we did another show. We did. I spoke of my love for Jack Jones, and Jack Jones actually does a great rendition of "If." It's he's one of my favourite songsters. So, you know, he also does it fantastic. But there was no, you know, that for anyone that loves their music, and this is when we talk about pub talk or whatever. When you get the arguments about who was the best singer, Sinatra or Bennett or I watched a film on Bobby Darin the other night. It was Michael Bublé's favourite. You know, women singers, Streisand and people like that. But, you must say that Karen Carpenter had a most beautiful voice. You know, she was just, you know, she sings and you think she's your daughter. You know, it's she's just she's got an angelic voice, and I suppose we love her even more because of the sadness of what happened to her. You know, but her voice was just adorable, wasn't it?
It certainly was, and we all carry those insecurities around with us in our baggage, and you don't realise, you know, how vulnerable some were, and she was just a vulnerable and so talented person, and as you say, that voice. I mean, the Carpenters. Today you can put a Carpenter's record on and it just stands the test of time. It was just beautiful. It's like songbirds singing. It's just wonderful.
Yeah. Like, you know, I mean, she was what you might call a perfectionist. I can imagine listening back to her songs and going over them and stuff like that. No, she just had the most beautiful voice. You know, I listen to Adele now. I mean, she's in that category, I suppose. But Carpenter, as you say, I think the vulnerability of her as well. We didn't really know. I was too young to know that she was going through bad times with her illness, and but she hung on in there, and you know, it's a sad thing that we. You know, is it sad that we love them more because of that, for what they did while going through such bad times? You know, personally,
I think it's a case of with you know, everybody. We're all human. We all want to be loved, and Karen seemed as though she didn't quite find that love, and I think it's in that we see all of us, our vulnerability, and I think that's one of the reasons. Well, for me, how you fall in love with Karen Carpenter, because she was just that vulnerable person, and you know, you just want to hold her and cuddle her and just say everything's going to be okay, and sadly for her it wasn't.
Yeah, and I watched a film of it, and it was it was more disturbing than anything.
Yeah.
That people can be treated that way. I suppose it could be said of people like, you know, in a different way, Amy Whitehouse or whatever, you know, such vast talent. What incredible talent to be born with, and yet it comes along with such baggage, you know.
Yeah, incredible. But what we're talking about, the European Cup Winners' Cup that you'd won the season before, your first defence was against Janus Hatichar. I can't pronounce them. They're from Luxembourg, and the story that I always remember when I look at that game, because you're beaten 8-0 away and 13-0 at home, and they're the smallest team ever to play in that tournament, and they got a throw, and the fella that was going to take the throw, so one-armed guy, wasn't he?
I'm not sure if he was their captain, but I think, the ball, for those who never went to Stamford Bridge in them days, we had that infamous dog track, you know, the greyhound track around the place, which really cost us winning the league. I always think, you know, I think if we played in the Stamford Bridge of today, we would have won the league. I think that's worth 10 points. In the 2-point game. And that night, it was just a night of kind of mixed emotions, because I think we spoke on the show before about, you know, how I thought that they were 11 heroes, and especially, you know, to have a captain with one arm is quite remarkable, you know. And although our boys, you know, I don't know, we didn't really, we were, you know, in them days, players were like that, you know, everything was about have been taking the mickey, but it wasn't. That wasn't the case with these boys. You know, I think they had 4 brothers in the team. I would like to hear their side of the story, really, but I bet it's something else. I'd love to have gone out with them after, and you know, if in the modern game, if I was earning the kind of money they're earning today, and I'd have treated all their team and took them out to dinner and asked them if they enjoyed themselves, because no other team from Luxembourg has ever done it.
No, it was quite remarkable, and as I say, it was 21-0.
It was a record-breaking score in Europe.
It was.
I don't think when records are broken, I can remember coming back and Ossie said, "I'm going to break the record," and he did. And but it wouldn't be a record that I would really put up on my wall at all. Because it wouldn't be worthy, and it wouldn't be. I think it would be disrespectful to the opposition.
Yeah, absolutely. A Horse with No Name is the next song of choice, Al. Originally called Desert Song, was one of the greatest songs by a band who were pretty much unknown, and you're absolutely spot on. They were. I remember this fantastic tune as we opened a boutique in Reading for Dennis Allen of the famous Allen family, and Reading didn't know what hit him. Do you want to tell us what hit him?
Well, it was, you know, Reading was a place. I think the most famous Robin Friday, was it, come out of Reading?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, didn't he just?
So he might have fitted in with this night. We went to open. Dennis Allen was a. I think he used to play at Reading, and he was a very good friend of a very, very good friend of mine, Alan Phillips, who was in the rag trade. And he was a big Chelsea fan, and a man I got very close to. And he introduced us to Dennis, and Dennis asked us to go to Reading, and about 10 of us went down to open his shop for him. And there's a hell of a lot of Chelsea supporters in Reading in them days. Yeah. And we opened the store about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we were still round the 3:30 the following morning. We had a party in his boutique, but it continued elsewhere, and I don't think anyone that was about on that night would have known we was in town, you know, because you know, we that was what we was good at, that Chelsea team. We could leave our mark.
And didn't you just leave your mark, an indelible mark? And a wonderful, wonderful song, and you're right. They really come out of nowhere. The song was written by Dewey Bunnell or Bunnell, however you want to pronounce it, and he was only 19 at the time, and he was a teenage son of an American serviceman, and his family were going up to Yorkshire to live, and he wanted to stay in London, so he stayed with one of his pals. And in his words, said, I was just absolutely bored out my skull. And I just started writing this song about the imagery of things that I'd seen in America. And that the horse with no name, he says, well, I didn't bother giving it a name. It was just an image of going through the desert with this horse of no name. It could have been anything. It could have been a camel. But there ain't many camels, are there, in America? And there's plenty of horses, of course.
Well, it's it being such a vast country, yeah. And I mean, it grabs the imagination straight away. I mean, the name of the band gets you straight away. But for a long time, I thought it was Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. It was their kind of music, and I would imagine I can imagine that group getting together with Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young and actually cutting a song. Because they're so alike. I mean, it's especially in the early days when Graham Nash first joined, and then obviously I think I put in my notes here that I watched the show that a few weeks ago with Neil Young on, and it was just, you know, it's got one of the greatest shows I've ever seen in his hometown, and he went back to his old, they call him a bar, but the old pub, and there was a tiny little stage, and he had a few old hands up with him, and he was just incredible. He was like I wouldn't say Leo Sayer, far better than Leo Sayer.
Yeah.
But he was like a one-man band. You know, he's got the mouth organ on, hasn't he? And he's got the guitar, and he just stands there, and he's like a 10-man band on his own. You know, but his voice is quite unique.
It is unique, and he also did say that he didn't want to sound like Crosby, Stills and Nash, but he did have an uncanny resemblance in the tone and everything. And if you didn't know that it was by America, you could think that it was from Crosby, Stills and Nash, couldn't you? And he did say it was nothing to do with illicit stuff, neither. It was just a song about an imagery of America and going through a desert with a horse of no name. So people can read into it what they like, but it wasn't anything stronger than than drink.
Yeah, well, it's just a beautiful song as well. You know, it's one of those that's. I think it was one of the. I mentioned the Reading thing because I remember in the early hours that came on and kind of sobered me up a lot. It was. I thought, who's this? You know, it was quite daunting and haunting. You know, it was the most beautiful, and it's always stuck with me. And every time I listen to it, I got a very good friend called Paul Churchill. Cherville, who lives in Reading, and I went down to do a show for him one night, and as soon as I reached Reading, it was all about a horse with no name, you know, and then we got the race course up the road, which is Newbury Racecourse. So I've backed a few horses at Newbury, and I think they didn't have a name either, you know. Oh my God.
Heart of Gold by Neil Young leads us nicely into our next track, Heart of Gold by Neil Young. Seriously good member of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. A quite unique voice. And I watched him the other week in his hometown bar. It was sensational. You watched him on a film in his hometown bar. But another song that he recorded as well, Only Love Can Break Your Heart. He nailed songs, didn't he? Neil Young, but so did that group that he was originally with as well.
Yeah, they were. They kind of come together, you know, from all parts of the United States, and obviously Graham Nash from Manchester. There's an incredible story. It's a little bit like me going to Stoke, only it's the distance in travel was. He was the lead singer of the Hollies, and they fell out with Alan Clark, who I told you that I got very drunk one day in London, which is another story. But and Graham went over there, and he was very disillusioned by much like me leaving Chelsea. You know, what am I going to do? And he bumped into Crosby, and Crosby, he spoke to Crosby about, you know, he said, I think he'd lost faith with me in my songwriting, and he says, all you got to do, Graham, is whatever you do, don't listen to anyone else. Just follow. He told him his words, follow your heart. Yeah. And he said he changed his life, and he left the Hollies, and he joined up with his band, and he never looked back. And obviously, we again on another one of our shows, he did the song with Joni Mitchell, was it?
I'm not sure.
He ended up with one of the top singers. I think it might have been Joni Mitchell. Yeah. And they was out one day, and they did out. You know, they went out shopping one day, and they sat down. She went in the kitchen, and he put the flowers in the vase, and she sat down at the piano, and she made the song Our House.
Yes, great song.
Yeah, and it was all through. He bought us some flowers, and you know, he lit the fire, and he said, you know, I put the logs on the fire, while she put the flowers in the vase in the home. You know, and it was just unbelievable. And he was telling the viewers on telly one night that this is how that song came about. And you think, how can something be so simple yet so beautiful? You know. But that's what they were. These people were, you know. It's like being a footballer. It's like, you know, if you want to improve yourself, and the more you improve yourself, and you go out on the field and you find that you get different experience, you know, you think, oh, I can't believe I did that. You know, but it's only improving yourself and playing with better players. And it was like Graham Nash moving up and singing with better folk, you know. It's only the same thing. Players can look very inferior with one team and then step up and they say, well, why didn't he play like that for us? We say, well, obvious, because he's playing with better players, you know. And that's what Graham done. He found his level with Crosby, Stills, and with Nash and Stills and Young. And they would, in music, they was what I would call the dream team.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. You know, and that song, Love Can Only Break Your Heart, is just, you know, I mean, I put it on. I was here the other morning, I was getting ready. I've had this bad cold, and I was feeling, I've got this operation coming up, and I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I hope I'm not going to miss this operation through this, and, you know, getting me down a bit. And I put Neil Young on, and he lifted me. You lifted me out of my kind of, and that is what music's all about, that inspiration, and that's what he was. And his voice, he's got the most incredible voice. It's just, he's got one of those voices that if you did karaoke or whatever, people try and take people off. You just couldn't get near it, you know. It's but what an entertainer, and what a man. I told by this film I watched when he was in his bar, you know, everybody adored him, you know, the old folk, the young folk, and you know, it was I do love that, but I'm a little bit of a romanticist when it comes to the American way of life. I really love that, and I fell in love with that, and I really didn't want to leave when I came back, you know.
Absolutely, and you did think that you were going to end your career and your days there in America. It was a place that you'd said in your autobiography, The Working Man's Ballet, that you were born to play in America. And in your autobiography, The Working Man's Ballet, you always reference the music, because music and football do go hand in glove, and that's what My Life, My Music is all about, talking about the music, talking about the great music of the time, the inspirations, and the football. A game that we have to talk about in the 71-72 season, come on the 27th of December, just the day after Boxing Day, against Ipswich, when you won 2-0. Now, there is a great story about Bobby Robson, but before we go into that story, the season before, you scored a ghost goal, so was there a little bit of that hangover from Bobby Robson, do you think?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, I don't think, I mean, when I went to Stoke, I was friendly with Jimmy Robertson, who played Ipswich, played it in that match for Ipswich, and I don't think we ever discussed it. It wasn't something that you know, had that been Leeds that scored against us, we wouldn't have blamed Leeds. So it's just another. You know, I've seen a couple last night. They're still going on. The clangers by referees. You know, how can you blame the opposition? And I'm sure Bobby Robson didn't, but that was a time when Bobby Robson was beginning to build a proper team at Ipswich, you know, and it didn't do him any harm for the international job. But you know, I kind of Ipswich kind of been a curse on me, you know. But since I scored the goal that never was, it was a curse on me, because I remember afterwards we played them again, and then I went to Stoke, and we were close to winning the league, and we got a broken leg against them. We had a man sent off. Well, every time we went to Ipswich, there was something went wrong. You know, it was a team I hated playing against, and we played them about 4 games from the end of the season when we were still going to win the league, and we played them at home and they beat us. And I blame Peter Shilton for that. He built a wall from a free kick near a corner, and I said, "What do you want a wall for?" And they scored from it, and that cost us the league. And then, of course, my last match for Arsenal, they beat us in the FA Cup final. So they were a thorn in my side since I scored that goal that never was.
Absolutely, and that season after on the Christmas, Webby played in goal, and so let's talk about David Webb playing in goal for the whole game, and also when Webby threw you the keys to his Rolls Royce, because I think that's a great story. I know we've covered it before, but it's just iconic.
Well, some of the I told him about it the other day. We had a nice day out the other day. It was in memory of Matthew Harding. Yeah. We do it every year for Matthew. Well, the boys do, and I've been fortunate enough to have been in on the last 3 or 4 years, and thanks to my friend Kevin Conlon, and I come as his guest, and it's a wonderful day. And Nigel Spackman was there, told a couple of stories. I says about David Webb when he was manager and all that, and I told him a story. I said it was incredible. It was a time when I was going through a bad patch. But it was a nice day. I came out of Stamford Bridge, and it was a Friday morning. Never forget it. And as I walked through the forecourt in the old ground, he said to me, he used to call me Young Hud, and he said, "What are you doing, Young Hud?" So I was, a loose end kind of thing. I said, "Well," I said, I think I'm going to make my way to Alexander, which was my restaurant. And I introduced all the lads to it, and it was absolutely the best restaurant I've ever been in. It was magnificent, and all the waiters and the manager, the owner was Maltese, and they become Chelsea supporters and loved the players there. Anyway, he threw me the keys, and he said, "You can drive." Anyway, I've turned round, and there's this great big white Rolls Royce there. So I get in, and he gets in the back because he thought he was a little bit like John Gotti, whatever his name is. He was always had a where we would buy the Sun. Most of our players buy it because of page 3, especially the younger ones. Not me though. I had a sporting life. But he always had the radio, the Daily Telegraph or Daily Times or whatever they call it, and I see him get in the back of the seat this day, and I pulled out of Stamford Bridge, and I got him in my mirror, and he was looking out the window, because in them days, Rolls Royces, there weren't too many on the road, and he obviously looking out the window. I mean, if you can imagine the Queen waving to him, and with that little hand, that little stick with a hand on the end, I thought he was like that. Look, and I was laughing. I was stopping at bus stops and bibbing the horn, and people were looking at Webby in the back. And anyway, we finally get there, and I turn into this little turning where the restaurant is, and it's called Markham Square, and it is the most tightest little square you can get. You can hardly park. You'll be lucky to park a Mini in there. You know what London's like for parking. And I somehow got this Rolls Royce into a parking spot, and I got out, and I was quite relieved that I didn't bang it or nothing like that. And I got out, and he got out, wrapped his paper, put it under his arm, walked along, and he said to me, "Well, well done, young Hud." And I threw the keys back to him, and he went, "Thank you very much." He says, "Is that the first time you've driven a Rolls Royce?" And straight away I said, "Webby," I said, "it's the first time I've driven a car." And he went, "Oh my God," he went white. He went white, and he went, "You're kidding me." I said, "No," I said, "DJ," I said, "it's the first time I've driven a car, mate." So as much as I say, you're so irresponsible throwing me them keys, and because you want to sit in the back and play the big I am, But it was great, and he didn't really get over it till about our second bottle of wine in the restaurant. So, but they were stories of the kind of camaraderie we had in our team, and the laughs we used to have, and the stories we had were incredible, really. I'm sure many players have got these stories.
Absolutely, but did he go any whiter that day than when Dave Sexton threw him the goalkeeper's gloves against Ipswich? What was the story behind that? How did Webby get in goal that day?
Well, that was a story of the Christmas period when Peter Bonetti went down injured, and our second goalkeeper was a kid called Stephen Sherwood,
he played at Watford in the cup final with a famous, infamous goal with Andy Gray that was a foul, and he dropped the ball. And Watford 1-0, I think. And well, Steve went up north to see his family. His mother and father were the Olympians, weren't they?
I'm not sure.
Anne Packer.
Okay.
And the hurdlers, some Sherwood, was it?
Okay.
Anyway, he went up to visit them, and Peter Benet went down ill, and we didn't have a goalkeeper, and they would try to get hold of Sherwood, and he was up north, and he was travelling, remembering there was no mobile phones in them days, and so they finally contacted him, and they told him to get back, and in the meantime, we're in the dressing room, and I don't know how they was giving us where he is or whatever, but I just say there's no mobile phones. But Webby, you say he went white. Webby loved it. Webby absolutely loved, and because he loved the challenge as well. I always say about Webby, he was a defender. He was a right back originally, and then he moved into centre of the defence, which he was much better there. But he was better in their box than he was in ours. He was dangerous. He loved to score goals, and this was just another challenge for him. And he put the jumper on, and now we got to, change the team around. David been in to see Bobby Robson because they were together at Fulham. They were friends, and he says, in them days, if you had to hand the team sheet in a half hour before the game, and he says, if Steve Sherwood turns up at 3:45, 10-3, can we have him in goal? And Bobby Robson said, yes, you can. And we just went along with that. And Steve Sherwood rushed through the door about 2:45, and Webby took his shirt off, threw it to him. All the changes started, all throwing shirts around to different people, and then he changed his mind. So it was Webby's had to stay in goal. We reneged on that, Bobby Robson, and that was when I kind of fell out of love with Bobby Robson because I was being a Fulham supporter. And Webby didn't have he ran out on the field, and I'll never forget, it was quite brilliant. It would be great today in front of the Sky cameras because he just went down on his knees and he prayed behind the goal, and but he didn't need to because that was all we needed. That was kind of our team talk. And we won 2-0 and they never had a shot. And it just goes to show when a manager pulls a stroke like that, what you can actually, it can be better than any team talk.
Absolutely. 58 games in total you played that season in League and Cup. And we're going to get on to a couple of Cup games because I want to talk about the Stoke City, the final of the League Cup. But in the FA Cup, you had overcome Blackpool in the January, and then you travelled across London. You travelled to Orient, and it was going okay, wasn't it? You take up the story. What happened next?
Yeah, no, it was going more than okay. Yeah. It was routine. It was routine stuff. We were the cup holders, and we'd gone 2-0 up quite easily. I knew a lot of their players, and I knew a couple really from the youth team. My very good friend was in goal for them, a fella called Ray Goddard, who played in our Chelsea Boys Club team that won the big trophy in London when Johnny Haynes gave us a trophy. So Ray was in goal for them, and he made a fantastic save from me. We were 2-0 up, and it was the most diabolical defending. It was another reminder of Dave Sexton getting it wrong. He always used to blame Osgood for when things went wrong, me and Osgood, but more Osgood. But how he could blame us for just absolutely schoolboy defending. And on this day, the last 2 goals were schoolboy errors. It wouldn't happen. I don't think it could happen today. This was just so poor, and we found ourselves 3-2 down. And as I say, I thought I'd scored, and Ray had made a great save from me, which would have made it 3-3, and at least we would have gotten back at the bridge and finished the job. And then Webby, of all people, he'd have been better off in goal this day. He was marauding upfield, and the ball dropped to him from about 2 yards out, and he somehow skied it. It was like reminiscent of watching Werner today. You know, when the ball drops to him and he somehow they scoop it over the bar. I can never understand that skill or lack of skill. So you know, he could have been the hero again, Webby. And that was Webby's old club. He started at Leyton Orient, so I sometimes wondered if he had something in his heart for them. But that wouldn't have been the case, because the sickening thing about it was the next round, I think Arsenal went to Orient and beat them 1-0 in the 6th round, I think, and they found themselves in the semi-final when Sunderland knocked them out. So we would have played Arsenal at home the next game, and had we beat them, we'd have played Sunderland, and Sunderland beat them and obviously went on to beat Leeds. So it was quite a story, that Orient game.
It was, and it repeated itself, didn't it, a few years after, when Peter Kitchen scored a brace and knocked Chelsea out of the FA Cup in 1978. You'd long gone by then, Al, but Orient were an Achilles heel for you in the Cup, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, in them days, I don't think there was a lot between Chelsea and Orient, though.
No, you're right. No, you're absolutely right, Al. Orient were a top side back in them days. Well, Championship, and I think Chelsea were, you know, either falling from grace or were in the Championship. I'll have to look that one up.
Well, when I left 74, went to Stoke in 75, 76, they got relegated, Chelsea. Yeah. So that was only 2 years after. So, and they were in a complete mess for 2-3 years. They had manager after manager, you know, Webby and Jeff Hurst and people like that. They just that was a Ken Bates era, wasn't it? And they were giving the job to anyone who knocked on the door, basically. Yeah. I think the gap between Chelsea and Orient in them days was frighteningly close, you know.
Absolutely, and I must say that in that FA Cup run, you did play Bolton in between Blackpool and Orient. But your next game was Stoke City on the 4th of March 1972, the League Cup final. Absolute red-hot favourites. I remember that as a kid. Blue is the colour. I remember 3 football songs as a kid, because I was about 7 or 8 in the 71 and 72 season. It was the first season that I really looked at football with Match of the Day, and I think we just about got colour TV in our house, so things were changing. And there was the World Cup song back home in 1970. There was your song, which was Blue as a Colour, and then Leeds United marching on together, and we are Leeds United, play for Leeds United. I can't remember the title, but it was that play all the way for Leeds United. That was a really tuney song, but Blue is a Colour has always been my favourite football song, and leads us nicely onto that game. You've got the song, you've recorded, you're flying high, everything's right, but it just goes so horribly wrong at Wembley, doesn't it?
Well, I'm doing a show in Stoke with Terry Conroy next Saturday, which I'm really looking forward to. And as I said earlier in the show, it's all about the Victoria Ground, and my best days of playing the game, most rewarding, apart from the international scene, but. It ended up that it was the best result that ever could have happened for me, you know, although I look like I can remember the night of losing that match. And as you say, we'd lost to Leyton Orient, and I think we've been knocked out of the Cup Winners' Cup by that Swedish team. And
previously, yeah. Yeah,
and we should have won both games. We should have I thought we'd have went on to win the Cup Winners' Cup again. I really did. I was, and this was all part of you getting down and everything else. But I remember the night of losing to Stoke, and we got to the hotel and we were having a few drinks. I looked at the evening's entertainment, and they had booked a fella who got to #1 with Lightning Strikes Again.
Okay.
Lou Christie. And he was live on stage singing Lightning Strikes Again, and I'm kind of thinking, oh, what, this is just so unbelievable, you know. We've had it against Orem, we've had it against the Swedes, and now this is for the lightning has struck again. And it was almost uncanny that someone's booked this fella for that evening, you know. And but my overall feelings about the game, I got so many different feelings about it because I've watched it a few times. I've got the tape at home and I put it on every now and then, and it was a terrific game of football. It really was. Yeah. And Gordon Banks, Peter Benetti should have saved the winning goal, I believe. I said to Jimmy Greenough one day, you miss it well, it was like a volley, but he didn't hit it as cleanly. What Jimmy's a beautiful kick of a ball, and he didn't catch it right, and Benetti just padded it out to George Eastham. It was as if it was meant to be, you know, because it was George's one of his last games for Stoke. It was his swan song. He was 35, and he was, you know, he was gonna retire, and I'm standing next to him, not knowing I'm going to take over from him, but you don't know that in the heat of the moment, and. But overall, and I did a show one night at Stoke, and they had on the big screen, they had the League Cup final on before my show, and I watched it, and Stoke played really, you know, I think Waddington got it brilliantly. He got it right. I mean, everything he did, Stoke that day, you know, they played a great. They played it right against us, and Terry Conroy, who's comparing the show for me, is. You know, really, he was their match winner. He got the first goal, and he took on Webby on the wide spaces of Wembley. And he, again, Webby shouldn't have been right back. He was never a right back. He was torn to pieces by Eddie Gray in 1970 at Wembley. Yeah. And yet, 2 years later, we get to Wembley again, and he's played him right back again. Well, you don't play someone like that on the wide spaces of Wembley when they're easy to get by. And Terry Conroy could go by you, and he was quick. And I remember he just stepped up to Webby, left him for dead, and hit a fantastic cross to the far post. John Ritchie cushioned it into Jimmy's path, and he hit it. It was like it happened so quickly, and they won the game. But looking at all aspects of it, I was finally delighted they did win it. And once my love affair began with Waddington, I was even more happier that they won, because if they hadn't have won, they wouldn't have been able to afford to buy me.
Yeah, and also it was the only cup that Stoke City have ever won as well, and even to this day. But when you
in the history, they've won, they've got promoted, obviously. From the second to the first division and into the Premier League, but it's the only trophy of any that's worth talking about.
Absolutely, and when you referenced Lightning Strikes Twice and Webby at Wembley and them open spaces, it literally did for Webby. Lightning did strike twice, didn't it?
Absolutely, and maybe that could have been the day if he possibly could have put Webby in goal again. Keep him out of the way, you know, because for the second goal, Peter Benetti was definitely he was fantastic for us. Peter Benetti was such a fantastic goalkeeper, and I suppose when you're that good, you make your mistakes become even bigger, you know, and sadly, you know, he's remembered for Mexico, isn't he? You know. For the Beckenbauer goal, which was pretty similar, really. He let under his body, which he would never have done in a million years.
It's quite unfair, though, isn't it, with a goalkeeper, that you look at all of, because you used to call him Catty, didn't you, Peter Benetti? Yeah. But when you look at all of Peter's fantastic saves and all the great things that he'd done between the sticks for Chelsea, it is those cock-ups that football fans remember, rather than them fantastic saves. Whereas, like, if you're a forward, you're remembered by the brilliant goals, not the ones that you missed. It just is the way it is with
Absolutely. You know, and what I always remember about Peter Benetti is in my first season we played at Old Trafford. We beat me at home, Manchester United, and we beat them up there 2-0. And it was great for me being 18, my first season. You got Law, Best, and Charlton on the field, and we just outplayed them. But it could have been different because I'm not sure if we were 1-0 up or 0-0. But Bobby Charlton picked up a ball about 35 yards out, and as he does, he took it on a couple of strides, and I was right behind him at the Stratford end, and he hit one that was in the top corner, and the Stratford end all jumped up and celebrate the goal. And Cabbie, as you call him, he came out of nowhere. And the difference between this and today's goalkeepers, he caught it.
Yeah.
Today they wouldn't have done it. I see them today, they can't catch the ball. They won't catch the ball. They punch the ball. They flap it and whatever. He actually caught the ball. And, if he'd have tipped it around the post, it would have been absolutely out of this world. But to actually come from nowhere and catch this thunderbolt from Bobby Charlton just said to me, not only are we a decent side, but we got the best goalkeeper in the league. And pound for pound, I think Peter Bonetti was.
Absolutely. You did mention the evening with Terry Conroy at Stoke. You've also got an audience with Alan Hudson in London on the 27th of November. Have you got any more information about that, Al? 'Cause it's all up on your socials. So anybody that wants to come and listen to these wonderful stories told by the governor, go onto either his official Facebook page or the official Alan Hudson Twitter page, which is Alan Hudson _10, and all the information is there. But how's that come about? And let's just dwell on that for a couple of minutes.
Well, it's as you know, our friend Lewis is. We was down in Henley-on-Thames the other week, and he introduced me to a very good friend of his, Darren, and he said, "Would you like to come and do something in my restaurant?" He said, "We've got a beautiful restaurant in King's Cross." Lewis stands by it. He said it's a beautiful place and the food's great, everything else, and he said, "Let's do it." And he just called me about 5 days ago, and he said, "Let's put this together. Darren's been on the phone. Let's do something." It's I think it's a time. We've been through the pandemic. There's been a lot of heartache. There's been a lot of bad times, and strangely enough, I got a phone call from someone I haven't seen for a long time from Victoria. A fellow chap called Buzz. He called me last night, and he says, "We've seen the thing. I haven't seen him for about 5 years." And he says, "We're definitely coming." So it's one of those things where, it's going to be like although it's the end of November, it'll be very probably like a Christmas party. Yeah. We do put on a show. It's all good fun. It's all friendly faces, and it makes you forget what's gone on for the past year.
Absolutely. But you did say no Leeds fans.
I put no Leeds fans of the 70s. And then those Leeds fans of today, they're under Bielsa. They're more than welcome.
Yeah.
I'm sure they would appreciate our rivalry because it was a great. I think our rivalry was a great one. Yes, I think it was very healthy for the game.
Yes.
Because I watched Marseille the other night, and I see the crowd trouble, and I see other game the other night where there was a lot of trouble on the field. You'll never, it was fierce. Our games were fierce. There was, the word hatred is mentioned. I don't think, I can remember Peter Osgood going in the England squad and saying what a lovely fella Norman Hunter is and this and that. But once the whistle blew, there was no love lost. They were great matches. I wouldn't have swapped them for the world. Even at Stoke when they come there and they were 29 games unbeaten and swanning around 2-0 up, and I go up there next week and people still talk about that game as the greatest game ever seen in Stoke City, and that shows you why Leeds were great for the game, and they were a terrific football team. If you played against Leeds in those days and you played well, then you could pat yourself on the back.
Absolutely, and to this day the rivalry is still talked about from Chelsea and Leeds United, and as you say, Al, both teams had great sides. Okay, Leeds won a little bit more than Chelsea, but both iconic sides of the 70s. And what Leeds could also say is lightning struck twice with them as well, because when you scored your first goal in that game, when you put Leeds to the sword 3-2 and stopped that unbeaten run of equaling Burnley's 30, they must have thought, blimey, him again. Gee, he's a thorn in our side. So every team has thorns in the side, and lightning don't strike twice just for Chelsea or for Webby, but it does for all of us, doesn't it?
Well, the great thing about that was a Webby team, and then a year later or 18 months later, we done them again 3-0 in the first game of the season for Brian Clough's first match. And that was one of my favourite moments as well. And I was only really disappointed that they didn't show that match on Damn United in the film, because that would have been a great, because that was, and it was really relevant for the film, because it was the first match in charge of Stoke, who started in charge of Leeds United, and it was at the old Victoria ground, and they come down and they were full of themselves. Little did we know that there was trouble with Clough and the rest of the team. It wasn't until you see the film that sunk in, but we put on a display that day, and we beat them 3-0, and that was the beginning of the end for our friend Brian Clough.
Absolutely. A genius, Brian Clough, another genius. Don McLean. American Pie was your touring song, but it's Vincent. What a wonderful Starry Night. What a great song. He could write a tune as well, couldn't he, Don?
Well, he's still going, and he's, he was a little while ago. I see him pictures with a young wife, and he must sing to her every night, I would imagine. He just got the most fabulous voice for these love songs, and Vincent's a great song. I mean, I'd like to know the story behind it. It's a little bit the instrumental of Elton John's, which is a song for a guy, which is a fantastic song, but there's no words to it, but. That was for somebody lost, somebody who died, and I'm sure Vincent was along the same lines. It was so from the heart. It was unbelievable, and it's strange that sometimes that nobody follows this up and tells you the story behind it.
Well, what we're going to do, I'll have a look at it, and I will put up onto the social media, because we don't want to give everything away. So that's one that we'll put up on the social media. And sometimes songs are just written out of just imagery, as was Horse With No Name. But sometimes there's very, very sentimental reasons for songwriters penning fantastic tunes. And Don McLean wrote a number of fantastic tunes. In fact, American Pie, there's a reference to the passing of Buddy Holly, but there was a lot of other things, and I'm not quite sure whether Don will reveal what Vincent was about, because he didn't with American Pie. He just lets you use your own imagination. But I'll have a look at that. And I think, something, Al? Sometimes when you know too much about a tune, you think, oh, right, is that... Again, a good example for me, Ben and Michael Jackson. When I realised it was about a rat, you texted.
I find that was part of Michael Jackson's genius, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
To actually get to write a #1 song about a rat, it just about shows you, not a Boomtown rat either. It was a real rat.
Oh, it's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, so that just shows you how Michael Jackson's mind worked.
Absolutely. And leads us nicely from Michael Jackson being in one of the greatest bands of the 70s, like the Jackson 5 and I don't think he quite joined the Jacksons, did he? They went on their own and he went on his own, but some guys have always been together, them boys. Sadly, some of them aren't with us any longer. Another genius who was part of the greatest band ever that's no longer with us, George Harrison, My Sweet Lord, another classic song from, I believe, the #1 album of that year, All Things Must Pass, and it was an album that you used to like to take to parties in 1972. Al.
Yeah, it was a double album, wasn't it? And it was quite something for George. George was one of those who's always kind of pushed to the back of the queue. It was all Lennon and McCartney, wasn't it?
Yes.
And George was a fantastic part of the group. It was funny. It's like having a football team that, like Brazil, really. They didn't need a goalkeeper, or they didn't need a drummer.
Yeah.
And the three of them alone, I'm sure. It's like when John Lennon said, when they said about Ringo, is he the best drummer in the world? He said, well, he's not even the best drummer in the Beatles. Which just about summed it all up. But George Harrison was by no means second to Lennon and McCartney. Far from it. He was fantastic. I mean, he's harmonising in all their songs. But then to come out and do what he did with All Things Must Pass was great. I mean, it was all about their days going with a different religion and all that, his Sweet Lord and all Maharaji and all that and everything else. But my God, it was great stuff from Harrison. I remember one night in particular, Mickey Dry invited me to this party over in North London at somewhere, and I thought, I hope I'm not going to get there and all the music's going to be a bit iffy, because I do. That's how much I love my music. If the party ain't got the right music, I leave. So I walked in, I've got this under my arm, the All Things Must Pass, and obviously I got to know the fellow whose party it was. I said, I think you better play this, mate, and it kind of brought a new meaning to the party. It was that's how far superior they were, and how far superior George was. But I'm sure with the Lennon McCartney thing, I know a lot of people. George Harrison was a favourite.
Absolutely. And you finished the season in 7th place, 42 games, 48 points. Of course, it was only 2 points for a win. Derby won it on 58, 57, 57, 57. Leeds, Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal 52 and Tottenham 51. It was one of the closest run title races ever. The greatest season, 1971-72. In fact, there's a lad, Dan Abrams, that's written a book, and the book's going to come out shortly. I've just recorded a podcast with him. Francis Lee was top goal scorer, 33, and Big Mel got a touchline ban for life. And on that match of the 70s with Dennis Waterman, he says, the great train robber's only got 25 years and I got a lifetime ban. But the 70s was a great time to play football. What's your overriding memory of that season, 71-72 season, Al?
Well, it was all good. 71 is obviously the pinnacle was winning the Cup Winners' Cup, but it all happened. It was a little bit like, my friends in Stoke. They have these get together and go away, about 20 of them and all that. I don't know what they call them, these trips abroad, and it was a little bit like that. We were just going on holiday every other week, or whenever we played. It was like 14 players going abroad, and we were just going away for the crack. We never dreamt that we could win it. We never knew anything about our opponents. We were just in there. We won the FA Cup the year before. We pulled off the most magnificent triumph really in the history of the club, I think, by beating Leeds after being behind 3 times. That was the key. That was why it was their biggest victory. And then we go abroad and we're just playing these teams and we don't know who we're playing. And it's unlike today where you can watch, with Sky TV and BT, you can watch your opponents over and over again, and you're playing against. Probably the key to our success in Europe that we didn't know who we was playing, so we feared nobody.
Yeah.
And when we got to Bruges, we got the scare of our life. We should have got knocked out. Our goalkeeper, John Phillips, played a game that's, I can't believe he can even believe himself. He was incredible. He stopped us from getting beat by 6 or 7 goals. They had a player called Robbie Rensenbrink on the left wing, was the closest I've seen to George Best. And they just, we had one excuse that Peter Osgood didn't play. He was on an 8-week ban. And we couldn't get out of our own half, like you see games today. We just couldn't get out of it. We couldn't get the ball off them. They were that good. And I remember coming back. We flew back straight after the game, and I was looking out the window of the plane in the dark, and I was thinking, how on earth have we got another chance here? I just couldn't believe that we were still in the tie. We should have been knocked out, and we got back to the bridge. And a lot say it's the greatest performance I've ever seen. We went 1-0 up, and I often think if they'd have come out and scored, that could have put an end to it. But they tried to sit on their lead, and we went 1-0 up, and about a quarter of an hour from the end, we were still 1-0 down. We were still a goal down from being 2-0 down. So we were 2-1 in the tie, and I got to the byline. I went across it, and I see my old mate used to do his trick, Peter Osgood, run in and then pulled out from around the penalty spot, and I just laid it back to him, and that was it. We were 2-2 in extra time, and the whole place went berserk. I've never seen Stamford Bridge like it. And the beauty of them nights in Europe was you couldn't see the dog track. I think that was a great key to it as well, which was a hindrance to us. And that was probably the best performance that our Chelsea team have put up, to come back from 2-0 down against Bruges in extra time. And I can remember after the game, I think I weighed myself and lost about 8-10 pounds in that game. It was, you got to wear sweatsuits to do that. But I was absolutely, it was one of those games it took every last ounce out of you, emotionally and everything else. It was the most fantastic football match. Sadly, we haven't got it on tape.
We haven't. We have got another brilliant game, epic game that you played in the 71-72 season. Was when you played against Tottenham, the semi-final, over 2 legs. Absolutely killer games, both games. A young Alan Hudson, I think, did you give away a penalty in the one game, but then scored the goal that took Chelsea through to the final? It's direct from a corner, pretty much, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were 1-0 up, I think. 2-1. It was 1-0, I think, and we were goal in front on goal average. And I think Martin Chivers took a long throw, and the pitch was very, very heavy, and it bounced. It come to me in the box, and it's kind of jumped up at me, and it was very hard to. I didn't think it was a penalty, but it must have hit me on the inside. If the VAR, I don't know what they would have given. But he gave a penalty. Martin Peters slotted it away, and it looked like we were, then we were level on scores, and they give them the kind of impotence, really. Mm. And then a minute, virtually the last kick of the match, we got. It's amazing what happens in the game. It happened at so many times with Osgood. It happened with him so many times with Mike England. Mike England was jumping all over Peter Osgood, and they was always fighting one another. And this happened near the corner flag, and Osgood went down, and Johnny Hollins always took the free kicks. I ran over and grabbed it off him, as much as I want to make up for the penalty. And I just hit it through a sea of legs, really, and hoped for the best. And our mate Cyril Knowles was standing on the line. Pat Jennings was in goal, which was, I don't know what Pat was thinking, but it kind of went by him, and it trickled into the far post. It was like, it's one of those things you couldn't plan. But it was meant to be, because I remember having lunch with Terry Venables the following day, and he said that was the best performance I've ever seen from a Chelsea team. So we got a little bit of good fortune, but they had theirs. But overall, it would have made, I think League Cup finals sometimes shouldn't be played at Wembley. I think over 2 legs, I think it was the key. I think it's great for both sets of supporters as well. If that had been the final over 2 legs, it would have been absolutely incredible.
It certainly was. And was the Barbados tour as incredible? Because at the end of the season, you always go on tour. You took the boys to Tampa Bay when you was at Stoke City. What happened in Barbados, or does what goes on tour stay on tour, Ruddy?
Well, there's a lot of things that go on tour. But no, I'm not sure is that probably the funniest tour was when we went away with Southampton, and that was very famous because they were called the A-Louse team, weren't they? And we had a drinking contest with them. No one ever knew who won it, but we played them the following day, and we decided while having this drinking contest that we had to take it easy the next day, and a draw would be a good result. At half time, Sexton wasn't very pleased. He knew what had gone on and told us to go out and play properly. We told them in the tunnel coming out, but they didn't believe us. We'd gone a couple of goals in front, and they started kicking lumps out of us. So what was a beautiful night the night before ended up in the bloodbath.
Where was that tour then? Where did you go on tour then?
I think that was somewhere in Trinidad and Tobago or something like that. It was out there because I remember going out fishing, and they're great parts of the world. I mean, unbelievable parts of the world to go and tour, and so that was. They were the perks of being a professional footballer in them days. The end of season tours and seeing places like that, where you would never seen, in life.
Absolutely.
And it broadens your mind, something incredible, And I was fortunate enough that when it all went badly wrong for me at Arsenal, that the man on tour, Jimmy Gabriel, who I got to know on that tour and become friends with, took me to Seattle.
Yeah.
And that was also one of the best experiences of my life. And as I wrote to my son Anthony the other day, who's now assistant coach of the USA national team, I watched the Ryder Cup the other night, and I wrote him an email to say, you must be very proud to be American. And the day he was born in Seattle was something special. And never knowing that he was brought up in a team that played baseball and basketball. He never kicked a ball till he was 9 years of age, and now it just shows you what you can go on to do in life. Absolutely,
but he's got a good pedigree, Al. He's come from good stock.
Well, he's got something. I don't know. He's I don't have to chip off the old block, but he's most certainly. When you hear people say embrace the moment, embrace the opportunity, he has definitely done that, and he has never taken anything for granted. And he doesn't. He's a lot like me in the ways that he's never got over, above his station. He's kept his feet firmly on the floor, which I'm a great believer in, and I can't stand people that get above their station and think there's something special. The greatest people I've ever met have always been the nicest people I've ever met, and I think Anthony takes that route, and he's getting repaid for it.
Absolutely. And finally, Uddy, is that dog still wearing the medal?
Well, he bites the calls of the dogs for whatever reason it is, and he's got them. He loves them dogs, and I know when my granddaughter went over there, and she was walking along the road, and the dog was walking beside her. They're fantastic animals. He does a lot for that, and I suppose I used to do talking about Don Shanks and everything else. We used to do a lot for the dogs, but it was giving them all our money at the grounds in White City and Wimbledon. But that ain't the same. That's not the same thing.
We'll leave it on a good. And I think Stan Bowles used to put a few quid in their pockets as well, didn't he? Bless him.
Absolutely. Yeah, we never left with any money. That's for sure. We had enough money to go get into our favourite nightclub on a Thursday night before a match. So we'd ended off the night on a good note, no matter what. We were good losers.
Superb, Al. Hey, till next time, mate. Thanks so much, and thanks for listening. God bless you, Ruddy, and we'll speak soon, pal.
Thanks, Paul.
Cheers,
pal.
Mucker. Ta-ra, mate.